Hey guys, Ambience here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to beat FNaF 2 Night 5 and Withered Mode on FNaF VR Help Wanted. That's right, we're jumping back into Blacklight World to finish FNaF 2 and tackle what many consider to be the max mode of Help Wanted as a whole. Withered Mode is certainly chaotic when pumped up to the max difficulty, but it's surprisingly easy for such an intimidating challenge. Before we get there though, let's talk about Night 5, the final night of the original patch before Withered Mode was even added to the game. Night 5 is definitely not as big of a difficulty spike as it was in the FNaF 1 mode, but it still makes things tougher. The altered blacklight control scheme makes things darker and harder to see, meaning you'll have to be extra alert. The AI is also ramped up significantly, and you'll be suffering a constant barrage of attacks from the toy animatronics all night long. Toy Freddy can now consistently attack multiple times, and the vents will be a constant threat. Not to mention Foxy, who's more active than ever and first shows up at 12 AM. The strategy here is mostly the same as Nights 3 and 4, just with greater emphasis placed on quick movement and keeping the music box highly wound. We'll recap the strategy in just a second in case you missed the last two guides, but first, here's the movement interval ranges for each animatronic. I'm showing these every video because I feel that they're crucial to understanding the strategy and timings of things. Toy Chica is the baseline here, as she's the quickest with good RNG. Well, good RNG for her, bad RNG for you. Basically how the intervals work is that every second, or 60 frames, the animatronics check if they're within their interval range. If they are, they attempt to move by essentially rolling a dice, a bit like a board game, if you will. If they get lucky and the check succeeds, or if the dice is high, if you will, then they'll move. Sometimes backward, but usually forward. If it doesn't succeed, they'll keep rolling that dice every second until the check succeeds. If they fail 10 or 15 times, however many seconds are in their movement range, they'll just keep trying until they eventually succeed. So there you go, the animatronics are canonically cheating. Once the movement check finally succeeds, they'll instantly start counting up to their next one again. Pretty confusing and headache-inducing, but that's how it works. The reason why this is important to know is that it allows you to know roughly when to expect animatronics. If you see Toy Bonnie or Chica walking to a party room down the hallway, for example, you know that they need to succeed 2 more movement opportunities to get to your blind spot, so they'll be there in 30 seconds at the quickest and a bit over a minute at the longest. Being able to predict when animatronics will arrive is actually a really useful skill for these later nights, and knowing their intervals also forms the basis for when to check the vents. Since the fastest Toy Chica can move is every 15 seconds, you'll check the vent lights every 15 seconds. Technically, you could check the right vent every 20 seconds instead, but that would throw off the pattern quite a bit, wouldn't it? I'll stop confusing you with a bunch of numbers now. The short version is to check the vent lights every 15 seconds, the rest is just how we got there. When you're not checking the vent lights, you should have the hall light on at all times to watch for Foxy and other threats, and be winding the music box on cam 11 as much as you can. You can check the vent cameras with the flash on to see if anyone's nearby, but this should be done sparingly. Only do this if the music box is over halfway wound, and if you know that no one is about to attack. Also, try not to do this too often in general. It can sometimes be tricky to get back to cam 11 quickly, and the music box is your top priority on this night considering how quickly it now runs out. These are the fundamentals of the strategy. Check vent lights every 15 seconds, check vent cameras occasionally, less and less each night, and otherwise, wind the music box with the hall light on. Keep in mind that the lights can get jammed sometimes when the animatronics are moving around, which you may have noticed on earlier nights, but it's now very frequent. You may have to press a light multiple times for it to come on, and sometimes 2 lights will stay on at the same time due to a bug, which is good for you, I guess. There actually is a bit of a downside here though, since animatronics appearing in the vent light make the same noise as Foxy appearing in the hallway. If you didn't realize that a vent light stayed on and hear the noise, you might just flash the hall a few times and then forget about it without realizing that someone's in the vent right next to you. Try and be aware of what lights are on just in case this happens. It might sound really niche, but it nearly cost me this run while I was recording. Speaking of lights jamming, Foxy is quite the threat here and will show up frequently, so get rid of him as soon as possible when he spawns. I found out in the middle of writing this video that you can actually just hold the light on him instead of spam flashing, so absolutely go for that if it's more comfortable. It lets you do other things in the process, and probably gets rid of him a bit quicker. No idea how this is news to me, I just never tried it before, but yep, it actually works and is probably more efficient. Overall, the pattern is really simple and basically the same as previous nights, just requires cleaner execution and faster reflexes. Be ready to flick to the mask when checking the vent lights, and watch out for the hallway too. Remember that Mangle can attack through the hallway in this version instead of just the vent, and can enter the office as soon as 30 seconds after getting there. Stay on your toes for that one. Meanwhile, Toy Freddy usually arrives at the hole a minute and 10 seconds into the night, and with his movement timer, his first attack will probably be about 2 minutes in. Watch for his eyes going dark, and as with the other animatronics, be careful not to remove the mask until he's completely gone. Last animatronic to touch on here is BB, who mostly works the same as the other vent animatronics, but has a few key differences, as you probably know by now. He leaves the office super quick, and therefore takes basically no time to get rid of, as long as you know you can take off the mask instantly. Another thing that helps out quite a bit is knowing how his sound cues work. Unlike in the original FNaF 2, counting BB's sound cues is basically useless since he can backtrack like the other animatronics. However, when he enters the vent camera, he'll make a much louder sound cue than his usual quiet ones, and can't backtrack at this point. If you listen for that sound cue, you can know he's close and be ready to put on the mask as soon as you hear the second loud sound cue. You don't even need to check the light before putting on the mask, which helps save time. Knowing all of this makes BB the smallest threat in the game in my opinion, so I thought it was worth going over again. I know that most of this is just repeated information from the last guide, but Night 5 really does bring very few new things to the table. Higher AI, a darker color scheme, more chaotic gameplay, and a faster music box, that's about it. Either way, it's absolutely worth knowing all of this info regardless, because it makes everything significantly easier. Stay alert and remember the basics, and you'll get through just fine. Moving on to Withered Mode, things are actually somewhat different for once, at least as different as things can be in a FNaF game. Withered Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica are back from the dead and giving PTSD to every veteran of the original game. While they probably are the most threatening animatronics, they're nerfed pretty significantly from the original, so there's no need to worry that much, but there's still a good reason why Danger Mode is usually considered the max mode of Help Wanted. It's quite chaotic and still requires decent game knowledge despite being underwhelming. The first major difference appears before even loading into the night, as there's a difficulty lever on your right with 3 settings: Easy, Medium, and Danger. This is basically a bonus night, so completing it on Easy will still count as a completion, but come on, don't you want a bit of a challenge? This strat will work for any difficulty, but it'll mainly be assuming that you're playing on Danger Mode, so just be aware of that. I won't waste your time recapping the same info on the same animatronics, so let's just talk about the 3 new ones and how to manage multiple threats at once. First up, Withered Freddy is pretty simple. He's basically just a more aggressive, more dangerous version of Toy Freddy. They can even overlap in the hallway if they're both there at the same time. He'll enter the hall, stop at the door frame, then enter the office a bit later. His intervals are pretty similar to Toy Freddy's, but vary just a bit more. I'll show them after I go over Bonnie and Chica. Withered Bonnie and Chica are quite odd. They more or less work the same as in the original game, which is pretty weird because Help Wanted is vastly different from the original. Whereas they sneak into the office while the monitor is up, or eventually force it down in the original, they just kind of suddenly teleport into the office here. This causes a blackout instantly and leaves you with a short amount of time to grab the mask before you die. Because of this, you pretty much have to be ready to put on the mask 24/7 now. Since you'll be spending the majority of the night looking down, you may not even notice them standing in the office, so go by the flickering lights instead. As soon as you notice flashing lights in the office, drop everything and put the mask on, and be careful to not take it off until they leave. They'll go away after a few seconds, just the same as the toy animatronics. Alternatively, you can catch them in the vent cameras to try and predict when they'll attack. I wouldn't recommend relying on that though, since the music box is now winding down pretty fast, and you've got enough on your plate with the constant attacks from the others anyway. It's best to just be prepared to put the mask on at all times. Anyway, now that you know how the Withereds work in the first place, here's their intervals. Pretty simple stuff, just remember how the intervals in this game operate from earlier. Besides the new additions, the strategy largely stays the same. Vent lights every 15 seconds or so, leave the hall light on, get rid of Foxy as soon as possible, be ready to deal with threats in the hall after they've been there for a bit. Check the vent cameras when you can and listen for BB. All that's significantly different is Bonnie and Chica being able to appear out of nowhere, and there being a new hallway threat to worry about. Oh, speaking of animatronics appearing out of nowhere, they can sometimes just vanish from the map for a bit and either eventually get to where they would have been headed next or backtrack. Super weird, no clue why it happens, but it does sometimes. I mentioned this last guide also, but it's actually a bit of a concern here. Just keep your guard up even if you don't see Bonnie or Chica in the vent cameras, and assume they could show up anytime. Go by the flickering lights, react quickly, and you'll be fine. If you happen to be playing in VR, remember the mask trick from last time. Hold the mask in your left hand when you know someone is close so that you can put it on immediately. It makes it much easier to react quickly. Since you'll be under a constant barrage of attacks, you'll also need to move quickly and prioritize things pretty well. Obviously, if something shows up in your office, they immediately become the top priority until they're gone. Otherwise, you can automatically get rid of Foxy by holding the light on him, and as long as you put on and quickly take off the mask within less than 20 seconds of BB's second loud sound cue playing, you can wait him out a bit. While checking the vent cameras is helpful, you should only really do it if the music box is in a comfortable position. I'd suggest over 75% wound. The main priority skill is not panicking and checking the vent lights too often and giving time to other things in between. Nights in this mode last 5 minutes and 15 seconds, a second longer than the nights in the FNaF 1 mode, so that's how long you have to survive. Keep the pattern up, remember the intervals by pausing the video right here on your phone or other monitor if you have to, and good luck. It'll be done in no time. Well, that's all for now. Follow this strategy and you should be able to complete the entire FNaF 2 mode. Now that you've completed the whole thing, do you agree that it's significantly easier than the original FNaF 2, or would you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of which, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you'd like updates on what I'm doing next, feel free to join the Discord server or follow me on Twitter for all the latest on upcoming videos, streams, and collabs, a chance to just chill with other FNaF fans, or even to get help on a night that you're struggling with. If you enjoyed this guide and you'd like to see more, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel to show your support. I know it's the classic YouTuber plug, but it really does help me out. Let's try and hit 25k by the end of the year if we can, and I'll try and get out as many guides as I can soon. I'll also be trying to stream every day of December working on these guides live, so if you're not watching this too far in the future, consider stopping by tomorrow to hang out and watch me work. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Bonnie360 for making this video's thumbnail, and to Insta for providing some great information to make this guide as accurate as it can be. Both of them have been helping out with these videos for some time, and they're both linked in the description, so go support them as well. All of the links that I mentioned earlier are down there too, so check them all out. With that being said, thank you guys for watching this guide, I hope it helped you, and I will see you in the next one.